So this tutorial is going to be focused on getting RunPod set up with AnimateDiff and ComfyUI. It is much simpler than it seems, so just follow along closely and trust me, you'll get it. So after you sign into RunPod and add some credits to your account, you want to head over to templates here on the left. And for templates, you want to find RunPod SD ComfyUI. You're going to click deploy and it's going to bring you over to this section. Now I'm going to use the community cloud because it's a bit cheaper. From here you can choose between various different graphics cards. It's literally all your choice as long as it's available, of course. Like you can even rent a H100, 4090, and you can rent previous generation as well, like a A100 or a 3090. For me right now, I'm just going to rent a 4000 because it's cheaper than a 4090. So I'm going to click deploy. As you can see, it has the template already set up and this Start Jupyter Notebook. So we're going to leave all that as is and we're just going to click continue. After we click continue, it's just going to give us some more specs, the pricing and how much everything costs. And from there, we're going to click deploy. So I have a previous instance that I made. We're going to ignore that and we're going to focus on this new one here. As you can see, it's setting everything up. Alright, so once that terminal window disappears and you see your utilization stats as well as this purple connect button, it means that it is now running, as you can see from the top right here. So you would click connect and that's going to allow us to enter into our instance. But before we do, we need to set a very important thing up. These three buttons here for more actions, we're going to click that. We're going to click edit pod. And right here where it says expose TCP ports, we're going to add 8188. That's the default port for ComfyUI when you set it into listen mode, which all makes sense soon. So we're just going to let it set up again. So now that it's set up, we're going to click connect. And we are not going to connect to port 3000. We don't want to do that. Instead, we're going to click connect to Jupyter Lab. And here where it says terminal, we're going to click terminal. If you followed my other tutorials, we are essentially in the command line, but for Linux. You'll notice on the left here, we have a file browser system. This is going to be very important to understand. So if I go to the root here by clicking this folder, you'll notice that there is a folder called Workspace. Anything that is inside the Workspace folder when you shut down your pod will still exist when you start your pod back up. If it's outside of the Workspace folder, it will be deleted, and that's something to keep in mind. So now let's talk about getting ComfyUI set up. You'll notice that we have ComfyUI already, but we don't have a virtual environment inside our Workspace folder that will allow our data to persist, just in case we install some custom extensions like AnimateDiff. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a virtual environment inside of our Workspace folder. So we're going to python-m venv venv. If you followed my other tutorials, notice that it's just about the same. So once that virtual environment has been created, as we can see from our file browser, we're going to activate it. So source venv/bin/activate. Notice that with Linux, our slashes are forward slashes, unlike Windows, and we must start with source when we activate our virtual environment. So now that our virtual environment is created, we're just going to follow the standard ComfyUI install steps. So first thing we're going to do is cd into ComfyUI, which essentially just means that we are now inside this ComfyUI folder. We're going to head to the ComfyUI repo. And all we're going to do is scroll down to the installation instructions, where you notice here it says for NVIDIA users, and we are using an NVIDIA card, pip install everything here regarding Torch. So we're going to copy that. We're going to head to our Jupyter Lab terminal, We're going to paste that in, and we're going to press enter. Now RunPod's internet is for the most part pretty fast, but as always, you know, it's 2.2 gigabytes and it's torch, so just give it a minute to install. All right, now that everything's finished installing, the next thing that we would like to do, pip install-r requirements.txt. Again, just copy and paste. Go back to our Jupyter terminal, paste, and install. All right, now that that's finished installing, this is a bit hard to manage with all the words on the screen, so I'm just going to write clear, press enter, and notice it clears the screen so that we have our cursor at the top again. So now we have to install the ComfyUI-Manager. To install the ComfyUI-Manager, we go to its repo, we click code, and copy this link here. Then we head back to our Jupyter lab, and remember, any custom nodes go inside the custom node folder. So we're going to cd, change directory. I'm going to write custom, but since I already have some of it typed out, I can press tab and it'll auto-complete the directory. So now I'm inside the custom nodes folder, as we can see right here. And I'm just going to write git clone and paste that link. The manager is now installed, and we can start up our ComfyUI instance. So we're going to python main.py and note -- listen. All right, so it's saying that our server has started and that it's located in this section. So how do we navigate to this link? Because this link isn't going to work. Well, we head into RunPod, and as you can see, if we click connect, we have TCP port mappings. So what we want to do is we want to take this public IP address here, copy that, and notice that it's telling us that the ports, the internal port would be 8188, but the external port would be 11161. And notice that ComfyUI is running at port 8188. So we know that this external port will be our ComfyUI instance. So we're going to copy our link. I'm going to drag this over here for clarity. Paste that in, and then I'm going to go and copy this external port. I'm going to put that, paste, and notice we now have ComfyUI up and running. We have our manager as well, and everything is working as it should. Now you'll notice we have some checkpoints, but they're all the standard Stable Diffusion checkpoints, and I would imagine that that's probably not what a lot of you want to use. So how do we download checkpoints? Shut down ComfyUI. I'm going to clear the screen again for clarity. So to download checkpoints, we're going to head into our models folder. And from our models folder, as you can see on our file browser, there are various folders for LoRa's, checkpoints, VAEs. For this tutorial, I'll just focus on downloading checkpoints and VAEs. We're going to head inside the checkpoints folder. And as you can see, we are now inside the checkpoints folder. That was CD checkpoints. And I'm going to LS. LS is list. List everything that's inside of this directory. So you'll notice that these were all the same checkpoints that were inside of ComfyUI when I showed you. So how do we download checkpoints in here? Well, I'm going to go to Civit AI and find a checkpoint that I like. I like this one. It's really awesome. I love the art style. And this download button, I'm going to right click it and I'm going to copy link address. And you'll notice if I press paste and enter, so you'll notice that it brings up a download menu. Now we're not going to download it onto our computer. We're going to download it inside of our ComfyUI container. So how do we do that? Well, wget, wget. We paste the link that we copied from Civit AI. Again, we did not copy this link up here. we copied, right click here and copy link address. We now need to give our model a name, because if we don't give it a name and an extension, it's just going to name it the numbers at the end there, which we do not want. So we're going to dash capital O. Remember, capital. Lowercase o will result in an error. So capital O, and I noticed the name of it here is Brick and Mortar Mix, and we're downloading version 3. So I'm just going to paste that in here. v3 and .safe sensors. And now our model is downloading. All right, it has finished downloading. We're going to ls, and you can see that in fact our model is now there. So now before we start ComfyUI back up again, let's go ahead and download a VAE. So we're going to cd change directory and ... That's going to bring us out a directory. We're going to cd into VAE right there. And we're going to wget, and I have a VAE here. That's usually the standard Stable Diffusion 1.5 VAE that you use. The download link here on Hugging Face, just like we did on Civit AI, I'm going to right click it, copy link address, and just the same, if I were to paste it in here, you'll notice it automatically brings up a download. Head back to our Jupyter Lab. We have our wget command here, and we're going to paste dash capital O. Remember, capital, lowercase will result in an error. And we're going to copy the name of it right here. Copy and paste. And just the same, you'll notice that we have our VAE now. We're going to cd out of this directory. So now we're inside models, and we're going to cd out of models into ComfyUI. And we're going to clear screen for clarity and python main.py -- listen. And again, ComfyUI is now up and running. Remember, we have to head to our public IP address and our external port, which I already have set up. So I'm going to head there. And you'll notice that now we have our new model. And if I were to load a VAE in, so VAE loader, notice that we have our VAE. And just to make sure everything is up and running, we'll hit Q prompt, and everything is indeed functional. So now let's talk about getting AnimateDiff up and running, because I know that's why you're all here. I have my workflow file here that already has AnimateDiff set up. I'm going to drop it in. Boom, we get our errors saying we don't have this node, etc. Remember, that's why we installed the ComfyUI-Manager. We're going to go to Manager, install missing custom nodes, and it gives us the options for the missing nodes. We're going to go one by one and install each one. That one installed, we click the next one. That one installed, we click the next one. So, as always, to apply the installed custom nodes, please restart ComfyUI. So we head back, we Control C, and we python main.py -- listen, and we get two errors. The first error is associated with AnimateDiff, and the second error is that we don't have ffmpeg. So all you're going to do to fix this, you're going to stop the server, you're going to git pull, and now ComfyUI is updated. So if I run it again, the first error is now gone, but it has been replaced by a new error, something that we can easily fix. That is that we don't have any motion modules. So how do we fix that? Well, we're going to Control C. Let's clear screen for clarity. We're going to cd into custom nodes. And if I go to the custom nodes folder for clarity, you'll see that we have our 4 extensions. We're going to cd into ComfyUI-AnimateDiff. We'll ls, or rather just look inside our file browser and notice that we have a models folder. This is where we're going to install our models. So we cd into the models folder. Again, on Civit AI, we have our links. I have to download. I'm going to right click just like we did before, copy link address. I'm going to head in here and just wget, paste the address, -O, and name it. So I'm just going to name it motion module 1.15 v2, because that is the motion module that I'm downloading, as you can see from here, v1.5 v2. And this will be a .ckpt file. And we're just going to press enter. So our model has finished downloading. We're going to cd out of this directory, cd out of that directory, cd out of custom nodes, and we are back at our ComfyUI root, which is here. So if I run one last time, python main.py -- listen, we still have one last error, and that's that ffmpeg is not installed. It could not be found. And this is why in the beginning of the video, I'm going to shut down the server, by the way, I noted the importance of the workspace folder. When we install ffmpeg, it is not going to install inside the workspace folder. So whenever you go to start up ComfyUI, if you shut down your pod and start it back up again, which to shut down your pod, you would press this stop button. I'm not going to stop it just yet. But when you start it back up, you'll have to reinstall ffmpeg as well, which it's not that hard. It's really simple. It's apt update. I'm going to clear to make things a little bit easier to see, and then apt install ffmpeg. It's going to ask us, do we want to continue? We're going to type Y and enter. And now we're just going to put python main.py -- listen. Never forget that -- listen. So now I'm going to refresh, and you'll see everything is working the way it should. I'm going to click our model that we downloaded, click our VAE that we downloaded, and I'm going to generate 16 frames as a test. I'll queue prompt. Oh, got to update our motion module here. So that's the motion module that we downloaded, queue prompt. Awesome, everything is working. How do we download our output? Well, in our ComfyUI folder, we would just output, and as you can see, so we would just download by right clicking and download. I believe you can also download the whole folder, can you? Download current folder as an archive, and that would download everything inside of the folder. Alright, so now the ffmpeg issue. Let's run into it so that you guys can see what I mean. I'm going to shut down, and I'm going to turn off my pod. Why? Because you're going to be charged 32 cents an hour if you have a 4000, or even more if you have a more expensive card, per hour. And you don't want to lose all your value. So you would click stop pod, and the entire pod is shut down. I'm going to exit the Jupyter Lab window because technically it's not relevant. And I'm going to start up again. There's two things to note here. One, we're going to have to reinstall ffmpeg, and two, our port is going to change. So those are the two things that you want to keep in mind when starting up again. So when we click connect, we want to head back into our Jupyter Lab. You'll notice that our VE&V is in there. We're going to click terminal. So we're going to source VE&V /bin/activate. We're going to cd into our ComfyUI folder, and we're going to python main.py /listen. And you'll notice everything worked except that ffmpeg could not be found. So we're going to Control C, and just as before, we're going to apt update, apt install ffmpeg. Hit yes, so Y, enter, and last python main.py --listen. No ffmpeg error, everything's working. Our internal port is the same, but our external port has changed. So we're going to copy our link here, paste it, and find our external port, copy it, paste it, enter, and we are inside of ComfyUI. We'll grab our workflow file again, drop it, set up everything, run it, and that is how we get AnimateDiff set up with ComfyUI on RunPod. Make sure to shut down your pod when you're not using it because you are losing money. But the great part about RunPod is that you have access to all kinds of GPUs, some seriously powerful GPUs like H100s and A100s, as well as 4090s, 6000s, 4000s, and even the older generation of 3090 Ti's and so on and so forth. This is a great way to get up and running with AnimateDiff if you don't have compute power, and this is also a great way to push your workload onto the cloud if you do have the compute power but you want to be using your computer on other tasks, maybe experimenting more with ComfyUI. So just follow the instructions. I know it may seem confusing for people who aren't the most tech savvy, but after doing it a few times you'll notice that it is really easy. For the most part, the only commands that you're using are cd, ls, and wget. That's really all you're doing. So blessings, feel free to ask questions down below. I'll try to help if I can. I'm considering making a Discord to make it a little bit easier to ask questions. This way, I don't have to always repeat myself, but also, we can discuss amongst each other and all together solve bigger problems that some people are running into. So blessings, stay focused, and stay creative.